So hello everyone. Since we're live, let's I do an intro while everything's getting started. Can the crowd see me here? Hello, virtual panelists. I am Michael Lewis. I am the host, the producer of the forum. I want to thank you all on behalf of just the public for engaging. Oh, we got an echo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just turn the volume down.
Let me see. Just turn. We have an echo, y'all.
Turn the microphones off.
Technical difficulties. It's okay. But anyway, thank you all. Thank you all for viewing. If you all have any viewers that you want to share the live with on Facebook or Instagram, it's Versus, and it's V_E_R_S_U. You get it, Versus. So it's continuously being broadcast live where they can see you all here on the screen, as well as the panelists in person. So our discussion today is education. Our host is Ms. Hurd, Ms. Hurd, and Ms. Ronicka Briscoe. So without further ado, I'm gonna let you all get started to let us know what we need to do better with education going forth in COVID.
Okay,
Hello and good evening to everyone. Welcome to our second edition of Versus on today, guys. Tonight we are going to discuss education after and before COVID-19. I am your co-host, Andrea Hurd, and I will be helping Ms. Ronicka Briscoe to move this conversation along as we have some really great panelists here for you all on tonight. A little bit about Versus really quickly. Versus is a community conversation that was created and started by Mr. Michael H. Lewis and his Algiers Auditorium here in Algiers, New Orleans on the West Bank. He wanted to start this conversation because he wanted to get the community involved and more abreast of the conversations that we needed to have that affected us the most. And so on tonight, we're having our second conversation on this Tuesday. And we have, like I said, some really great panelists here to discuss education before and after COVID-19. And so I'm gonna pass it to Ms. Ronicka Briscoe.
So, as Drea just mentioned, we are really excited to be here at the Algiers Auditorium. We are thankful for Mr. and Mrs. Lewis inviting us into their space and investing their time, energy, and resources into leveraging their platform to host this Versus Forum around the topic of education. And we're really going to dig into what is the future of school. So school has been a little different through COVID, and I want to say COVID is not over, it is not done. We are still experiencing and enduring COVID, but this pandemic has seemingly, without any remorse, has definitely impacted the communities of color more than other communities. And because our communities have been impacted more, we start to look at the health disparities in our community, how that's impacting our students, our families, and outcomes for our kids. We've also seen the racial tensions in America heighten through this time. So we not only have the health disparities happening, the COVID-19 happening, but we're also seeing heightened racial tensions that are also playing a part in our landscape right now. We're also seeing this term used and thrown around, essential workers, and that has come to definitely mean something different through our COVID era. And parents and students are struggling. There's some people who are in person. There's some people who are in the virtual world. I remember being in college years ago, and digital divide was a key term. It was a new term, but now we've really seen the digital divide and how it's been elevated through this process. So we are excited about this panel, and I want to start us off with a statement from Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings. She's the author of the book, We Want to Do More Than Survive. And she calls for a hard reset in a recent article. Dr. Billings states, a hard reset means we have to rethink what we ought to teach as well as how we teach. A hard reset means we cannot see teachers as essential workers only in the midst of a pandemic. We now realize their work is essential to the everyday well-being of our children. We know that without viable public health, we will be vulnerable to the next global pandemic, and there will be a next one. We know that people need to earn a living wage to avoid catastrophic loss. We cannot patchwork our way to post-pandemic life. We have to have a hard reset. So, if we keep doing what we've always done, we continue to get what we've always gotten. We continue to get what we've always gotten, which is an educational system that is designed to be inequitable. So today, we are really excited to have a diverse group of esteemed panelists whose work has involved innovation and thinking outside of the box. So in order for us to think about this hard reset and what it looks like to live through and endure this pandemic and all of the rest of the things that's happening in our social political context, that's the frame for our session today. And we're really excited about all of our panelists. So we're gonna start with introductions, and we have the team from the Living School here in New Orleans, Kei and Stefin joining us, and I'm gonna give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll move into our panelists.
Well, peace. Thank you so much for having us. It's an honor to be with such a beautiful group of folks on this evening talking about a topic that's really important. I am Stefin Pasternak. I'm the school director over at the Living School. We're the newest public high school in New Orleans, out on Bullard Avenue in New Orleans East. And we are, amongst many other things, we're a project-based democratic high school that's focused on equity. And so we believe in building a school that promotes the health and well-being of our students, the communities that we all live in, and the environment that we are all a part of. And so really, really excited to be here. My background is in education. I've been an educator here in New Orleans since 2008, teaching English, culinary arts, and all kinds of things in between. And I also am a permaculture designer, a chef, and a writer on the side. And so I'm really honored to bring those different perspectives and experiences to this conversation tonight.
I just asked y'all to speak in the mic because the rest of the virtual world can't hear you.
Gotcha.
All right, peace, y'all.
There we go.
All right, that sounds good. Peace, y'all.
She's better.
My name is Kei. My students affectionately call me Mix Kei or Mama Kiwi. I am a New Orleans native. I'm an Algiers native. I went to Ellis Hall in the car. I went to the illustrious Dillard University.
Hey.
Where
F you.
You heard me. So yeah, we definitely want to pay homage to our historically Black colleges and universities. We also want to give a shout out to the indigenous folks who occupied this land before we were here, as well as all the people who have came before us. But yeah, so I am the director of communications for an organization called Southern Organizer Academy, where we teach leadership and kinship-based organizing skills to Southern-based folks to promote power and build social and structural change. I'm also an education specialist at Living School, where I work closely with students with IEPs and 504s, also students who need additional support and help. I'm also a photographer. I started my own company called 504 Photos. So on the side, I'm a photographer. I'm also a gardener, grower. You can find me in anybody's garden. I love to lend out my services so that my people can have food and herbs and medicine and things that promote wholeness and healing and justice. So I'm really excited to be here and share all that I am, all that I have with y'all. I really believe in giving and receiving information and exchanging that freely. So that's why I'm here, and I'm excited to be with you all and get to know my fellow panelists, as well as my host. Thank y'all so much for having me, having Living School here.
Stefin and Kei, you guys want to stay up there? We're going to get you guys some stools, some chairs. All right, so let's move on to Dr. Valencia Douglas. If you want to introduce yourself, please, Dr. Douglas.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Dr. Valencia Douglas. I've been doing this a very, very long time, probably close to almost 50 years now in education. I absolutely adore teaching and learning. I began many years ago as a teacher of students with special needs. My belief, very strong belief, is that all children should be taught in a specialized, personalized manner. When we group children, we take away their right to be who they are. And my whole life as an educator has been centered around that idea. Even as I earned my master's and my doctorate, and even as I became a principal and assistant superintendent and superintendent, I believe, and I continue to believe in everything I've done, has been focused on individualizing students' learning experiences. And I think because we don't do that, because we speak about children having to prove that they belong in certain places, we deny access in various ways. We deny students the opportunity to achieve their greatest potential. So I'm very, very pleased to be on this panel and to talk about what the future of education can look like now, as I would agree. The pandemic has overturned everything. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us to really look at education differently and to explore the schools all around the country that are individualizing students' learning opportunities and see how we can do that and replicate that and be part of that. Especially important for children of color, especially important for children who are marginalized, and that's poor children. We have poor rural children, we have poor urban children, and we have poor suburban children. It's not centered in one area or one region. We are miseducating children all over this country, and we have an opportunity to change. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
I want to layer in here that Dr. Douglas received her doctorate degree at a time when Black people did not attend Harvard University. So I do want to definitely shout her out for that. And she is continuing to be a leader through her board membership at an independent school here in New Orleans. And she's also a university professor. So we're really excited to have Dr. Douglas on this panel and all of her experience. Let's move on to Malcolm. You will introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you so much for having me this evening on this panel. Good evening, everyone. My name is Malcolm Ferrouillet. I'm a sophomore at St. Augustine High School, and I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the students. This has been a really tough time to get adjusted to this new way of learning. They call it the new normal. And from the middle of March all the way to now, we're at home, we're learning, we're having a lot of anxiety, but we're getting through it. And I'm just here to speak on behalf of the students from what I hear my classmates talk about all the time, and just from my experience and what it's been like since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. Thanks so much.
Hey Malcolm, can you speak a little bit to your leadership, the interviews that you've been doing, and the work in the community?
Oh, yes, ma'am, of course. I've been at St. Augustine High School. I've served as both 8th grade and freshman class president. I am very involved in the Future Business Leaders of America. I was recently elected the Bishop 7 Vice President for the state of Louisiana. I am president of the Stefin Financial Club at St. Augustine High School. I serve as a member of the City of New Orleans Executive Advisory Council, a member of Jawan Future Leaders, Team Court, and a member of the world famous Uptown Music Theater, directed by the famous Delphia Marcellus.
Amazing.
Right.
Thank you. Malcolm is bringing all of the energy.
His whole resume.
Yes, his whole, it is impeccable already.
Proud of you, King.
Next, we will have Dr. Brown Alexander introduce herself, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jawan Brown Alexander. I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel. Just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in New Orleans. attended Allen Elementary, which is where the current math and science school is. I also later attended McDonough 39, which is where the current Capdo charter school is. I attended middle and high school at Eleanor McMay Magnet. When folks ask you what school you went to when you're from New Orleans, they really mean high school. That's how you know you're from New Orleans. I'm a proud alum of both Southern University and Xavier University. I was blessed to be a classroom teacher where I was able to work with middle school students as an ELA instructor. And my goal was always to nurture them and to teach them lifelong lessons. And I hope that I carried that into my work as a district level and a school level administrator. I've been an educator for the past 25 years. For the last 2.5 years, I've worked with New Schools for New Orleans as their chief of schools. And I get a chance every day to support school leaders and teachers. Very familiar with Stefin's work and his team's work. Just to be able to understand how to support teachers and leaders each and every day is definitely a blessing. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Lawrence, will you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lawrence Jackson. I currently, let me give you a little bit of my background as well. I spent 20 years in the healthcare industry, decided I was tired of running the rat race, decided that I needed to do something that meant something that was more purposeful. So I became an educator. After the likes of my family, my mother and my uncles, lots and lots of people in my family are educators. So I jumped into education. As an educator, I've been practicing, I have been practicing about 9 years in education. Rose through ranks at a local school, became a member of their administrative team. Focused really heavily on the use of technology in the classroom. That was always my thing. Always interested in technology, so I found ways to interweave technology into the classroom, which led me to my current pursuit after I achieved my master's degree in education. You know, I was one of those folks who said, listen, you're not going to have any respect in the area of education unless you got some alphabets behind your name. So since I realized that early on and I wanted to go places in education, I went and got my master's in education in educational leadership, student leadership. Then followed that with a pursuit where I'm almost done now as a doctoral candidate for my education, a doctorate degree in education technology. I also hold a postmaster's certificate in education technology as well. So all of that to say that I'm very interested in what's going on in our community today in light of the pandemic, the leverage of technology to help mitigate some of the educational challenges that exist now, especially as it relates to the presence of students in schools, the presence of teachers in schools, and certainly technology has its place. But unlike some others, maybe, I feel that technology is not the end all to be all. You must focus the technology along with appropriate training and exposure and professional development of teachers so that they can know how to leverage technology for the betterment of the young people. Currently, I serve as Chief of Staff at STEM NOVA here in the city, where we have engaged students, we have engaged schools, we engage the community in STEM. My practice was as an educator in both math and science, and I served as a master teacher in high school, middle school, as well as at the elementary level over those 19 years that I served in schools. So I'm glad to be here, excited to lend my voice to this conversation. I'm sure it's going to get a little animated from time to time, but it seems like we got a lot of passionate educators in the house, but certainly we thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Miss Monique, will you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, so good evening, everyone. My name is Monique Toussaint, of no French heritage that I know about. I think that a lot when I'm in New Orleans. And I will name my schools too, but they're not from there. So I actually went to school both in Trinidad, West Indies, and St. Thomas, United States, Virgin Islands, Solomon Island, all true and true. Graduated from, as you say, in New Orleans. Your high school matters, and so we call our high school the high school, so nothing else counts down there. So I am from Shout out Molly High School. And so funny enough, my mom's a teacher, and I spent the majority of my life on the island knowing most of my teachers. So my future physics teacher was my helped me with my 6th grade science fair project, right? And I wanted nothing to do with education. I went to school in DC to get a business degree and to make money, and ended up doing a marketing internship for an education nonprofit. And this was pre-gentrification in DC, and so a lot of the schools that we helped were absolutely horrible to be in as an adult, much as a child. And while I would have been a millionaire taking this Zoom from my yacht, and actually helping children, I could not see that and I want to help, right? I'm not, so I've been involved in education for a very long time just by being in the back doors, back scenes with the teachers, and then the line with them when my mom took us with them when they were striking. So I obviously finished my degree because that was important. I was on scholarships. I do have a business degree from American University. I did go on to George Washington University to get a degree in education and human development. And so I started a career at the U.S. Department of Education. And I've been here, December will be 13 years. I know it looks like 21, but no. I started like when I was 15. Child genius, graduated at 5, worked no. But so I started at the Department of Education because, like I said, I saw so many disparities, and even before that, before I even came to ed, I'll say ed a lot, it's called ed. And I was working for an international education nonprofit, and we would support other programs. One of the biggest programs is the Fulbright program, and that's when they bring international scholars over here, and they would show them American schools. And so if you're not familiar with the geography of DC, we're at the bottom has Northern Virginia, which is some of the most affluent counties in the entire United States. And so then you have Southeast DC, which is the poorer portion, where it used to be Gentrify, right? And we would take those scholars from all over the world, fly them in, and take them to see American schools in Northern Virginia. And I kept remembering in my head my internship experience where the schools in DC were dark and under construction and metal detectors, and some teachers did, they pulled sheets out of workbooks because they didn't have lessons. Like, it was absolutely a crisis even back then. And so it didn't sit well with me that we were taking these foreign scholars to see the best schools, right? So the schools in Northern Virginia looked like mini community college campuses compared to the juvenile delinquent facilities that they had in DC. And so when the opportunity arose to apply for a position at the Office of Innovation and Improvement, I applied. I did not get it, but I applied a couple months later and I got it, and that was the best. The program I ever found was meant for me. And so I've been at Ed a long time, well, not long, but almost 13 years, and I have worked in all of our programs like Promise Neighborhoods, charter schools, full service community schools, the voucher program, and then I was fortunate enough to run into, to help to create the initiative. So under the last administration, they created a White House initiative specifically for educational excellence to African Americans, and I was pulled over on a detail to help start that office. And then as they transitioned administrations, I was hired full time as a career staffer to maintain that initiative, and so that's where I am right now. We have an initiative for Hispanics, we have one for Native Americans and Alaska Natives, we have one for HBCUs, and then we have a Center for Faith and Opportunity Initiatives. Now, initiatives, Asian American and Pacific Islander, they deal with the life of a child, whereas the HBCUs had been around for so long, they were focused on HBCUs, and there was nothing that spoke to the life of a child from prenatal all the way to post-secondary success. And the vast majority of African Americans, ironically, don't attend HBCUs. They attend community colleges and predominantly white institutions called PWIs and predominantly black institutions called PBIs. And so our office was created under the last administration to address that. And so we focus on access to high quality early learning. So, for black kids, we talk about go to Mama's house and go to Auntie's house, but they're not learning the skills and cognitive things that they need so that they're not at a deficit when they start kindergarten because the word count is where it needs to be. We focus on teacher quality and teacher diversity, making sure we have qualified and or teachers that look like them to help students. We focus on access to STEM coursework, right? Because if they don't take algebra, they don't even qualify to major in higher ed, to even pursue STEM careers. And our final one that we try to emphasize is post-secondary success. What does that look like for a black child, and how do we help them get there? But I'll talk more about that later, but that's really where I'm at. I'm so passionate. I miss being in the field. And so I used to teach at the community college GED MAC because I'm very passionate about helping people pursue their dreams beyond the barriers. So teaching at night for mostly immigrant students prior to this administration was like my part-time thing to kind of like still be there, not be at this level. And so I'm excited to be here with all the movers and shakers and Malcolm. I want to be like you when I grow up. Of those things, I think I only did that for you. But super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone, for those introductions. That is great. We're so happy to have you here in our Versus community. So to first begin the conversation off, I really want to just do a slight temperature check for everyone, because everyone here is either a teacher, a student, but we all work in education. And I really want to start with Malcolm, because if I can speak for everyone here, I want to say that each and every one of us are really here for you all. You are our children, you all are our future, and we're looking forward to everything that you all are doing. So my first question is what is your state? How are you feeling right now within the pandemic, within whatever respectable area that you're in? Just how are you feeling right now with the state of education? So Malcolm, how's school for you so far?
So far, starting my sophomore year, it's been great. I get to see all my friends virtually. It's not the same as it was before, but it's been good so far. My teachers have always been making sure that I'm always on top of my work. They make sure I understand things. They want to make sure that we succeed, and they understand that, not everyone is used to, all this technology, so they take the time to explain different things. Now, that's just for me. Now, for others in my class, it's been harder for them to get adjusted to. And it's understandable, it's new. And even though it started, we were still very confused, and we still didn't know what to expect later on coming in. But so far, it's been great. I'm hoping for a rest of successful school year, and I'm hoping and praying that we can get out of this as soon as possible. But so far, it's been great. I couldn't ask for a better virtual learning experience.
Oh, that's excellent. Anyone else want to speak on where they are with our virtual instruction or your virtual work in whatever organization you're working in education?
One of the things that I see, my daughter's a teacher, so I've seen her learn how to use technology, how to use Zoom, how to use Google Classroom, how to engage her students. I've seen her struggle with trying to get different ways of teaching and her content. And I'm very impressed with all of the people that are coming together to help teach her. All the different groups and agencies, and I think that's very good. I think people really are beginning to understand more and more the importance of education. Me personally, I did not want to teach through Zoom. I mean, I didn't want to learn anything new with technology. I really didn't. My brain wanted to do other things, but life makes you do what you have to do. So I'm learning how to use technology, and what I'm really enjoying about it is the ability to have that face-to-face with students through Zoom. While you're not there physically, there's still a way to connect and have a level of intimacy and trust and personalization that to me is very, very critical for being a teacher. And I was worried that could be lost. I think it still can be. I think you have to work on it, but you can have a degree of personalization with your students and have the students also interact and connect with one another. So I think those things have been very important to learn and very critical for my success as a teacher using Zoom with adult students.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that answer. Living School, why don't you guys chime in on that one really quickly?
Would you mind me stating the question?
So the question is, how is instruction, education right now in lieu of COVID-19, with it being virtual?
Check.
Yeah. Just how are your teachers feeling? Like, do they feel stressed, overwhelmed? Are they having a good experience? What's the feedback that you're getting?
Sure. Well, I just want to start off by saying Living School is like none other, and so is New Orleans. In New Orleans, we already have an advantage because our students are inherently bright, inherently bold and beautiful and big with their personalities and their abilities and capabilities. Like, we got blessed. We already started off ahead of the game. Now, as far as Living School as a family, I also want to speak just to the global temperature. Like, being in crisis is not unfamiliar to our people. Being in a pandemic-like state is not new to our people. This is honestly, as we call it in New Orleans, a little lanyard. Just one more thing to deal with. So it's like wherever you was before the pandemic, is that plus the pandemic. So if you was good, if you had what you needed, if your needs was being met, you're more likely to, be doing all right. However, there are people who are dealing with housing issues before the pandemic. There were people who were dealing with food insecurity and family members who may or may not have had the access to educational resources that they needed. We have a lot of students who are the leaders in their families, in their households. So it's just a compilation of the many things. And that's what makes us so dynamic at Living School. Like, we seek to heal and nourish and nurture the whole child. We extend beyond our children, and we're looking to help families. We have kids in Living School on a daily. Somebody, little sister or little brother's in the kitchen getting snacks and running around, doing circles around the common area. But we've just been being very resilient and just being like realistic in our expectations for our students. We don't expect them, just to be, soaring through this pandemic. But right. given everything, I must say, just, excellent. Stefin,
yeah, I think now is a good time because you brought it up. And one of the reasons why we asked you to be here is because your school is so different. If you guys can just elevate your philosophy, what you guys work towards, strive towards, and talk a little bit about your school culture since you brought it up.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The thing that I want to just build on from what Kei started with is just this idea that I think one of the things that sets us apart from perhaps the way other schools are moving. I want to give credit to lots of other schools too that I trust and see that they're doing this right as well. But it's just centering the humanity of our people first, and people not just being our staff, not just being our students, like every single person who's a vital part of the ecosystem that is Living School. And so I think that ecosystem approach, that living-centered approach is what makes us different. So to give you like an example of what I'm talking about, obviously one of the big concerns that everybody in education is talking about in this pandemic moment is like how much learning was lost, how we make up for that learning. I think when I hear a lot of people engaging in that conversation, I hear them talking about it as if learning is like units in an English textbook, or like scores on a math test. Like our students aren't gonna score well enough. Like Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary, just sent this very kind of, what I would call like nasty letter to all 50 departments of ed last week saying like, no, testing will not be canceled this year because if we're not testing, like how could anybody be learning anything? And it's this whole, I think there's this idea that is partly colonial, partly capitalist, partly driven by this post-testing education world that we've been living in since No Child Left Behind was passed, 20 years ago now. That says that learning is limited to the traditional Eurocentric academic contents. B is only what can be measured on a multiple choice test. And C is not happening unless we have the results of that test. And I think we want to challenge those paradigms and say that learning, in fact, is an intrinsic behavior of life, not just human life, but of life. And that the principles with which we work are ecological principles, are the principles of life. Our ancestors have been running effective systems of education for tens of thousands of years. And while we need to respond to this context of the moment that we're in and be forward thinking, folks are always interested in this conversation about what's innovative in education. We're also interested in what's indigenous in education. What has been effective for our ancestors, and what is still effective right now that we either can claim and lift up or can reclaim and lift back up. And so, I think about how we make time in our adult culture with each other, in our student-facing culture in our classes, and in all of our interactions with our families to lift up that health, well-being, and interconnectedness of all those ecosystem factors to make sure that folks are well first and foremost. Because once folks are well, learning is going to happen, right? Like learning is intrinsic. All we need to do is create the conditions for learning to thrive, and learning will proliferate.
That's
I
right.
think that I think is one thing that we do differently. So thank you for that question.
Can I jump in there?
Yes, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, so I want to applaud the school. I know I studied a little bit of the concept when I was with a local charter as well. Great concept, very innovative, very different. But I think as well, for the full context of this discussion, we've got to acknowledge the fact that most of our schools are not in that model. And I don't say that to speak against your model, but I say that to speak towards reality. And unfortunately, a lot of our schools do not embrace that conceptual basis that you guys have based your school philosophy on. So having said that, I think that the changes that have taken place very, very quickly in this post-COVID period have been the changes that have been trying to take place over the last 10 years. We've been introducing technology to schools on a limited basis over the last 10 or 15 years. It has not moved anywhere nearly fast enough. And all of a sudden on March the 12th, we were faced with this reality of we've got to have technology in every school.
Right.
And I think that has precipitated an entire spiral of events that have caused a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and a lot of discontentment even in a lot of the circles, both on the student side, the teacher side, the administrator side, the district side. Complicating all of that is the fact that our educational system is, in fact, based on a testing mentality. So you've got this whole piece of teachers trying to figure out how do they maintain and teach standards that their children are going to be tested on, and yet at the same time be efficient and effective in meeting those kids where they are educationally. Now that's my education hat speaking right there, right? So at Seminole, what we found since March, we actually had to flip all of our curriculum to virtual as well. Those of you who know Stefin know that we were very much so involved with in-person events and in-person interactions, and engagement was a critical piece. But we found a way to engage our students even online, even virtually. And with that, we've had no problems with the engagement piece. That some schools that we partner with see a challenge there. And I think some of the lessons that can be learned through our experience as we try to support schools, as well as the experiences of others, is that piece of networking. It's going to take a village to get through this. It's going to take the entire diaspora of what we have here in the city to bring about the changes that are needed to happen. For instance, first and foremost, some of the innovations that might be necessary. And I'll just name one, but there are several. If you've got a really good math teacher in a school, and that math teacher can teach all levels of math, you've got 3 sections of a math class. Why should you struggle in a school now to have 3 teachers teaching math when you have that one teacher who can give an entire lesson to an entire Zoom full of students and have those other teachers in individual breakout rooms to support the lesson content, or to support that one master teacher, let's say, in deploying that mathematics lesson. And then you leave time afterwards for that personal interaction in those breakout rooms. Those are the types of innovations that we are trying to promote that would possibly even shift the entire process of what teaching and learning actually is. That shifts the entire process of what is actual teaching. And what we find, and I'll close on this point, what we found so far, and what we continue to find, and we'll continue to have conversations with our school partners, is that what we find is that a lot of schools are trying to take the processes that were in existence before COVID and just throw them into a computer. And that will never work. But education has not changed in 100 years. We still have this thing of teacher at the board, kids in the seat, and the teacher is giving out all of this knowledge. One of the hardest transitions that I recognized when I was in schools, when I was teaching, was the fact that there was a desire for teachers to be facilitators and not regurgitators. And it was tough for teachers. I'm coming in from outside. It was tough for them to get out of that regular rut and routine. So unless we really take down and become innovative in our approach and allow ourselves to become innovative, I think we're going to have a hard time in education of adjusting post-COVID.
Thank you so much for giving us, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, what we have to do is get rid of standardized tests. If we want teachers to be creative, if we want teachers to be courageous in their decisions, if we want them to really embrace training, we have to get rid of standardized tests. Standardized tests, in my opinion, if you go back and you look at when they were brought in to reduce access for children of color into regular classrooms. You had to prove that you were capable of sitting in a classroom with white middle-class students. And that's the purpose of the testing. But we really need to go to testing. We need to fight testing. We need to develop other ways to assess student progress so that all students' ideas and knowledge and skills and capacities can be fairly assessed. Standardized tests are the worst thing that we have in American public education today. They focus how you teach. They focus what you teach. They focus when you teach it. And they focus who learns from it. And if students don't have a certain, if schools haven't got a certain SPS, if teachers haven't got a certain score, they have something wrong with them. There's not something wrong with them. It's something wrong with what we say they have to show us they understand. That's what's wrong. I absolutely agree that the capacity we have to train teachers is amazing. The capacity we have to individualize instruction is amazing. As long as we tie it to standardized tests, we are not going to move beyond where we are right now. Because teachers will be afraid, school districts are afraid of losing monies because monies are attached to student production, student outcome. And that is, not only is it racist, It's also classes. It's also an economic system that holds poor schools in jeopardy. Rich white middle class, rich black middle class, and upper middle class school districts can get around this. How do I know this? Because I was superintendent of those kind of districts. Right. Okay? We didn't do this. There is a right for parents to say, we're not going to test our students. Yeah. And the federal government has to accept that. Right. But we don't do that here. We allow our students to be sliced and diced out of their educational experiences. You have to prove that you're worthy of getting to algebra. You have to prove that you're worthy to go to an honors class. You have to prove that you're worthy to go to physics. This is wrong. This moves children out of opportunity. This moves our children, whether they're rich or poor. This is not fair to them, and it will not extend America's capacity in the world to achieve tremendous things. When we bring people together, when we allow their brains to truly grow and develop, when we allow people to communicate and understand how they learn and think, the imaginations that they have, the creativity that they bring to their thinking is unbelievable. And this is what standardized testing does. It stifles that capacity. And it reduces access for students into educational experiences that they need to have in order to move through the 21st century. So for me, the most important thing we need to do is come together and stop standardized testing of students. And teach and allow teachers to develop within the communities and the ecosystems that they're talking about, to come together with parents and teachers and students and all the people that know their communities, that know the capacity of their community. That's what we need to be doing. We need to come together and use the law to fight what they're trying to shove down our throats, because they're not shoving it down the throats of parents in Westchester.
That's right.
Okay?
Correct. All right.
They aren't. So that's my say.
I want to just add to something Dr. Douglas just said. I appreciate her being so super candid. I think, we definitely want to be innovative, but I think the only way, or the first step, is for us to really reimagine. Like, we have to rethink the way that we are, doing this education thing. I definitely loved what the soon-to-be Dr. Jackson just said about making certain that we're wanting to be innovative in our approaches. But until we really, every stakeholder, and that's our students, our teachers, our leaders, our parents, really use their voices to say, like, this is not what we want or expect.
Yes.
Right? And I think in terms of accountability, and it is something that I specialized in over the years, it can put a strain on a school. It can put a strain on a system. And thinking it through in terms of our state, we do a lot of testing in comparison to other states, right? So how does our new superintendent, our state superintendent, how does he look at that? How do we really begin to unpack the fact that we could do, we're due for less testing in this state. Like, our kids, if we don't swing and do the paradigm shift all the way to what Dr. Douglas just mentioned, like just do away with it, the least we could do is start to figure out if we have to do so much of it every single year, right? Really thinking through what is best for our students in Louisiana specifically. So I think being intentionally thoughtful and really reimagining what our education space needs to look like, especially as it relates to what Dr. Douglas just mentioned, standardized testing.
And you know, the money and time and energy that we spend on standardized testing, if we rethink how we assess student development and progress, that money could be better spent. For example, project-based activities where you actually engage in the community, competency-based learning. All of these things are actually possible and are happening all over the country. Where, you know, right now, our testing does not include science. It doesn't include writing with students. Students don't really have to write anymore. They don't have to really think. So what we really want to understand for the future, we're not going to do testing. So again, we need to really align what we want our students to know and be able to do as 21st century human beings to a test. And those tests that we have right now don't do that. So I agree with you, Dr. Alexander. I think that there is a process of reducing this, and it first starts with what is the minimal testing that we need to have students do. And then what kind of testing does that need to look like? And we can support our schools to do those kind of innovative things. I'm going to go to the Department of Education for a minute. Put out grants and RFPs that ask people to think along these lines. And you'll have people thinking along those lines too. So again, everybody has to come together. And guess what? And you know this, Department of Ed, Monique, it's happening all over the country. People are doing this as it is. We have a school here, Waldorf. It's a school where they don't test. Students learn very, very differently. There are places right now where these things are happening. We need to look at their success. We need to understand how they are looking at things for children and how they are being successful with that and what that would do for children of color. Children of color who are poor, to be told, you don't have to prove to us that you're worthy to sit in a classroom with your peers. That is what we tell them every time we test them. You have to keep proving to us you're worthy to sit in this classroom. And when we start that in March, our children in New Orleans really receive an education for 3/4 of the year. The rest of that time, starting in March, everybody is tuned to one thing, testing. Prove that they're worthy. Prove to us, school, you're worthy to keep you money. Prove to us, school, you're worthy for these students to be here. What is wrong with us? We are letting a white racist system continue to enslave us and enslave our children. And we have to, that's the mentality that we need to really help our parents understand. It's not about accountability only, although that is critical. It's about what kind of accountability are we asking our parents and our students and our teachers and our CEOs to show us. And the accountability is to show me you're worthy. Because I don't believe you're worthy to sit in a classroom next to this middle class student. I don't believe you're worthy to go to college next to this middle class student. Excuse me. Those are racist ideologies. It's based on a racist vision that black people are uneducable, poor people, poor black and brown and indigenous people are uneducable unless we educate them in a Western European philosophy. So that's what we need to break through. We need to take advantage right now of this opportunity to break through that issue and say, no more. We are not vestiges of slavery. We want to be vestiges of rooting out racism. In 1954, they said we're supposed to root it out, root and tree, right? And we haven't done it yet. What do we do instead? We put standardized testing in there. And we put that root in there next page. We need to pull that racist root out. And I believe in New Orleans, all these charter schools and all these CEOs coming together to say, you know what? Let's look at how we test. Let's look at when we test. Let's look at what we test. Let's look at why we test. And begin to move away from that and own our own testing, own our own way of being assessed and evaluated and held accountable. And I will shut up because this is something I've been dealing with for many years.
50 years.
But you're here.
I just want to jump in really quickly. None of this is in the pocket points, this is in the question, but so what I will say is, from the national perspective, more often than not, it is hard to hold schools across the nation accountable without some sort of testing, right? So one of the things that we and they enter into Ivy League institution or a regular PWI, and they can't even get past the first level math, they're in remedial math. And so we're not saying that the test, I don't agree it should be thrown out. I do agree with Dr. Alexander, it should be assessed and figured out which one should we use, how should we use it. But I do think there should be some level of accountability for us to make sure across the board they're getting the pieces of things. Students at schools that are supported in neighborhoods that have the socioeconomic status to support those schools, like Northern Virginia, those schools look like mini community colleges, right? But then you have students in Southeast DC that don't. And so how can I assess from my level, right, that they're getting equitable education? Because we know they're not. They don't have the resources to do the research and figure out what's the innovative ways to engage the students. They don't have the resources to hire qualified teachers. They don't have the resources to have HD sometimes. Their resources are based on, they have police in their schools. So I think that we have to figure out the best way to make sure that all our babies, call them babies in our office, to make sure that all our babies are learning and can move on beyond the K-12 system. What does that look like? And making sure that you care, you're passionate, your school is doing it, but in many of their neighborhood schools that's not paid. And so we can only use the levers that we have, and for some of them it is funding, it is tied to the funding, to try to help our babies as much as possible. Now, one thing I will say is there are ways that we can be creative and intentional about the grant process. We only we implement programs. If you want to make a difference in what we're funding, talk to your state representative, lobby, advocate, tell them, when the full service community schools program, I was one of the team, my second year at they were creating that program. And they were tossing around words, but when they decided they didn't want to fund it anymore, some lobbyists went to the Hill, down in Senator's Air, and it's been funded for the last 12 years I've been here. So if you want to see something funded, you need to make sure you are one registered for your census to make sure you're counted so that the resources are allocated for your community. 2, you're registered to vote and you actually vote because you vote for school board members, city councils, state, district, the people that get our dollars and decide what to do with it. They might say, I'm using Title I money for paper to send flyers home, and that might be okay. Is it? We don't know, but you voted for them, so they're the people that you put in place to control these systems, and they decide how to implement this. We are very much, we're gonna do it. This administration is very states decide, which means you decide. And so you have to be intentional about, one, again, I'm gonna say, completing your census, and 2, making sure you vote. Not just for the president, but for your local officials. Coupled with, when we put out grants, and I left the grant side, I did grants for my first 6 or 7 years, it's a cycle, right? So the people like Dr. Douglas and Dr. soon-to-be Jackson and Dr. Alexander, and even,
Kei and Stefin.
But making sure you're part of the peer review process, right? So you have the same people in the same institutions reviewing grants for 10, 15, 20 years, and you expect to see something different done. So not only are we not involved in the process of advocating for the programs that we want to be funded, we're not at the table making decisions about who reviews the grants and awards them to communities doing the work. Coupled with the people applying for grants have the funds to pay for grant writers to get the grants, and then the people doing the work at the living school may or may not have those same resources. So you're talking about a system of things that you have to do to make sure this changes. So it's not one thing or the other. We have to figure out how does it all work together.
Yes.
And it's not just the test. They might emphasize the test, but there's so much more that we have to talk through. And I don't know if we're going to get to them, but the shared responsibility between families and schools and communities and making sure we support these babies. And so I'll stop there, but I just wanted to be we can't throw it out, because then I can't make sure all my babies in Mississippi are getting the same education as the babies in New York, right? Because then they go
I guess because I'm old and I've been doing this a long time, I don't see any other way except to really stop and throw it out and start over in some ways. But I also agree that we have to develop a coordinated plan, reduce foolish, because again, I've also been in very poor districts where we don't have, I agree. But guess what? The amount of money that has to be spent on putting kids in special ed and doing all of these other things and not training teachers. We need to put our money where it can really benefit. And we spend too much time putting our money into testing processes and procedures. And not enough to train our teachers in developing their skill sets and developing their understanding of content and how they think about children and their cultural awareness. So again, I understand, I truly understand the issue of accountability. I truly understand the issue of diversity of experiences in the educational world. But I also know that we keep going back to forcing everybody to be accountable through a testing process that hurts children of poverty and children of color. So if we want to help our children, we should do things that are going to help them because we understand how the human brain learns and develops. And if we want to test children to see if they're learning, then we should test them based upon how the human brain learns and develops and not based upon a bunch of data points.
All right, you guys, I want to jump in because we only have 21 minutes left on this conversation. And I just want to say the panel has been successful in railroading our questions, but that's okay. You guys have been amazing. But I think something that's been elevated in the discussion is this funding piece. And we know the funding itself is by design racist because we're looking at funding based on the local property tax base. So when we think about funding our reimagined school, what are your thoughts around that? And let's start with Malcolm. We haven't heard Malcolm's voice in some time, and I really want to make sure we elevate the student voice. But Malcolm, as we think about where we currently are with schools having to invest so much money in new technology, we have parents who have to hire caregivers. Some parents are investing in pods. Like, there's so much money that is necessary for us to do even what we're doing to try to hold the pieces together. What is the best funding model? Who should be funding things? Is it fair to have our funding wrapped into our local tax base? What are your thoughts just around the money allocations in this conversation?
Well, I'll say thank you for letting me speak on it. So this summer, this was a St. Aug year called BYOD, Bring Your Own Device. And we all got these little computers, which are very nice computers, but they're very expensive. And during coronavirus, there's been a lot of cutbacks. People have lost their jobs, and it's been very hard. So for the people who couldn't afford the computers, who still don't have their computers yet, I feel like the school and the Archdiocese of New Orleans, the state of Louisiana, should be out here asking the parents, do you need assistance? We'll help you get what your son needs. Or just any child that needs this type of work or assistance to get what they need to have a successful school year. It's important that the state leaders actually have a voice out there, and they're supposed to speak on it and say, if you need me, you can call and I'll give you what you need. It's not really something that you can depend on, really, which is what makes me upset. Because the same person that might be in the classroom with me might not have the same opportunities as me. I've learned that growing up in a two-parent household with two educated parents. My mom has a EDD, my dad has a master's in public health, and I've learned that even though the children might be in the same classroom as me, like Dr. Douglas spoke on, they might not all have the same opportunities as me.
And they deserve the same opportunities. It's like
they sure do. They definitely.
Dr. Alexander, you want to speak to Malcolm's point? I know that in our city specifically, we've actually gotten a lot of praise about some of the initiatives around the technology.
So in New Orleans, and I forget who spoke to this a moment ago, but we were at a little bit of an advantage, if you can call it that, via this crisis. going through Katrina and going through other hurricanes and other things that are like natural disasters, we definitely understand how to cope and how to bounce back. During this crisis, our organization, who partners very closely with the school district, figured out a way to support teachers and leaders by first and foremost figuring out how we could kind of close the digital divide. It's not really closing it completely, but working with the school district as they put up, I believe it was like $5 million initially, which is a lot of money, and then it's not when we're talking about over 45,000 kids. Figuring out how to fund things like getting computers, laptops for them. We also raised, I think, almost $800,000 in trying to help students to get Wi-Fi devices. The digital divide here is still not closed. I mean, it's going to take a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of folks that are invested in the community to really make something like that happen, where it's like everyone is one-to-one. Everyone has access to, Wi-Fi or streaming, like everyone has it. It's going to take a lot of money. And so we've been really looking at ways with not only the school district, but with the city council to kind of figure out the mapping for that. Like, do we, kind of locate areas where we know students don't have access and really drive the access to those spaces. Malcolm just mentioned, like, his parents are able to buy him a computer and he has Wi-Fi access. Well, for those students that don't, they would be able to really benefit from maybe community Wi-Fi, right? And maybe Malcolm wouldn't need it in this particular scenario. And so just looking at ways, again, to reimagine how to bring the resource to the table for our community. I think one other thing that I'll mention that we're working on is a professional learning communities at schools that have signed up so far, where we are providing instructional technologies support to teachers that need that extra layer of support. And so I'll stop there. There's a lot going on across the city and folks helping other folks, schools reaching out to other schools. And we do have a lot of innovation that's happening, but we definitely could use a lot more in terms of support and bringing all the ideas to the table.
And I'll jump in and say that we have up on our website, it's ed.gov/coronavirus, and we have resources on here that speak to remote learning resources for educators, administrators, and related service providers. We have resources for learning at home. There's CARES Act emergency relief. We've released several press releases around different formula grants and education stabilization fund, discretionary grants, elementary and secondary education relief fund. There's tons of different funding here. I also want to emphasize this is a great opportunity for us to tap into the community and the businesses in our community.
Yes.
It can be something as simple as on-the-job training, apprenticeships, internships, things that give kids a little bit of opportunity along with maybe some extra money because it costs less to, don't sound bad, but less to hire a kid. But it's thinking through, this is the same when we go to businesses to fund our sports team. This may be the opportunity for the businesses to donate like old technology they don't use anymore because they updated their devices. And so just being creative about how we leverage the resources in our communities and the businesses that have the funds, and making sure if we have 501c3 partners that can apply for funding from international organizations that want to fund nonprofits, this is an opportune time to do that. If you look at the model of the community school model where they partner with nonprofits, this would be a great time to apply for that.
Did anyone else want to jump in really quickly before I deliver our last question of the evening.
Yeah, really quickly, I just wanted to name that there's absolutely no reason why every student in this city, in this state, and in this nation shouldn't have the technology and the resources that they need. And that's just a fact. It's just zero reason. New Orleans with a capital T, period. Period. That's what my sister said. My sister said period. Right. This city generates so much revenue. We have so many attractions. We also have an issue with the mismanagement of funds. There's no way in the world the Superdome should be getting remodeled and rebuilt over and over and over again. How much did the new airport cost, y'all?
$1 billion.
Yeah.
$1 billion.
$1 billion. We got the best food in the world, yet some of our children and our families and our elderly people are hungry. We got antebellum mansions, and we have people who are unhoused. It's no reason, and it's unexcusable, and it needs to change when?
In the developed,
right
the
now.
richest developed country.
Yeah.
Okay, my sister said we're in the richest developed country in the nation. There is no need for our children to not have everything they deserve and more right now. Because they got somebody right now sitting off of St. Charles, eating up, burning up all of our money, just running through all of our money. Our children need their resources now. Our educators need the resources to educate our children right now. Okay, we need to defund. I know y'all hate to hear it, but here we go. I'm an abolitionist. We need to defund the police. All right? We need to defund the police. They budget up. They gave 60% of New Orleans budget. 60%. I can't stand coming home, and I'm driving down to get to my house, and it's the police parked outside the projects. Wait. All day long, we constantly being police, constantly being surveilled. Y'all got money to put metal detectors in our schools. Y'all got money to put NOPD in our schools. You know, y'all got money to police and secure, and as my sister said, test us. Y'all got time and money and resources for all that. But we got children who some children don't have nowhere to sleep right now. We have children living in poverty right now. One of my favorite things to do, one of the reasons why I am where I am, Algis had some buildings. We had Craig Cultural Center. You could go to Craig Cultural Center after school. You could get you an apple, an orange, a bottle of water. Get on the computer. They'll teach you some computer skills. Commune with your neighborhood. Sometimes in the back they'll have chicken and fries and all that stuff like that. You know, I used to go to Black Star Cafe. Brother Bakir used to have nothing but books, African Center conscious books. I go in there, we'll have live performances. You can get on there and play the drums. And in those places right now have been foreclosed, gentrified. Our brothers and sisters are losing their businesses in this city right now. A lot of us, unfortunately have lost our homes, our places of business. Those small stops on the Underground Railroad for little black kids are no more, and it's unfortunate. Because places like that made me who I wouldn't be sitting. I'm gonna be real with you, I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for my community. If it wasn't for places like Black Star, where I was able to go in and help educate some of the youth. Kukuwa Academy was in that school. Akili Academy was in Black Star Bookstore. You know, they had children, youth programming. There was a shop. That place housed people in the community, artists, live music, all kind of stuff was going on in there, and it shut down. And it ain't no need, it ain't no reason for that to be shut down. And lastly, just a little off topic though, we demanding a fully funded relocation for the members of Gordon Plaza right now.
Wait, can I add one more resource? If you go to Connect Home USA, it's to provide HUD-exclusive housing residents with access to digital literacy and education.
Repeat it one more time for us, Monique. Repeat it one more time for us.
ConnectHomeUSA.org. And that's another great source to try to help with digital divide.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna go forth with our last question of the evening. So, and thank you all so much for doing this. You guys are so passionate. I mean, you guys have touched on every single question we didn't even have to ask them. You guys are running the whole conversation yourselves, so we know we are talking to some very experienced, passionate educators, and we really thank you here. But for our last question, based upon your current role, what part do you play in ensuring all children receive a quality education, and what are you prioritizing over the next 6 months to a year?
In 1 minute to 90 seconds.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I understand. That's what I said. I'm gonna get it out the way. Hey, listen, one of the things that we're doing, and that I take personally as one of the top leadership at Stefin, is the fact that we have recognized that teachers need support. We recognize that parents need support. Dr. Alexander mentioned the digital divide, but we've got to also understand that once everybody gets a technology tool in their hands, there's the second level digital divide, which speaks to the fact that there is a lack of understanding of how to appropriately use that technology in order to achieve outcomes. So that's another whole piece of the puzzle. So I think that I'm going to make that my life's work here as we move forward. Certainly, Stefin has taken that role on. We are providing professional development for teachers. We have an entire section on our website designed for educators to see what types of programming may be there. And I certainly do believe that we can all come together as a community to make sure that our schools and our teachers and our leaders have the resources that they need in order to make things happen for our students.
I'm going to say thank you, Dr. Jackson, because you're already there. Okay, thank you, Dr. Jackson, for speaking from Stefin. Thank you so much. Who's next?
I'll see you again. Thank you.
Go to Malcolm.
Give it to us, Malcolm.
Okay, well, I want to say that as a New Orleans youth, it can be my job to make sure that I speak my voice. And people think that youth, they don't know anything, they're still developing, wait till they're, after they graduate from college, then they'll know something. But as a youth, I can speak my mind and what I know and from what I see every day. We need help. Our classmates need help. Everyone in this country needs help. So as a youth, for the next 6 months, I will try my absolute best to make sure they won't make a change overnight. If we all work as a community together, we can make a change and make sure that no child has lack of resources to what they need to have a quality education in the time of coronavirus.
Thank you, Malcolm. Jawan.
I'll be quick. I think for us it's making certain that teachers who are teaching our kids every day and the families that are supporting their children have access to the supports that they need. I think that is fundamentally what our organization is really reaching for. Our team we're working diligently to collaborate with school leaders, community leaders, teachers to make certain that they are set up for success so that they in turn can create successful spaces for our future leaders. A lot of what we do is around designing professional learning hubs or learning communities. And so I see that work will definitely continue. We didn't get a chance tonight to talk about the trauma-informed work. So we're looking at creating trauma-informed support spaces for teachers and school leaders.
That's awesome.
And so maybe we can do this again, and I can update you guys on it. Thank you so much.
We are thinking of having a part 2. We are. Ms. Douglas, Dr. Douglas?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone here tonight. I think this has been really exciting, and I hope we do continue the conversation. I'm going to continue what I've been doing, which is to educate the current leaders and future leaders in the city on how to lead in a thoughtful manner that is ethical and moral and courageous and focused on the needs of children, understanding their role in the community as a community of leaders so that they continue to communicate and be transparent and support one another. I also think I'm going to take on Ms. Toussaint's recommendation, and I will definitely call the State Superintendent of Education who is, as a former superintendent, I'm hoping has a better vision for students and volunteer my time. I'm sure he has a number of committees he'd like people to get on. I'd like to retire, but obviously my passion is still there.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Douglas, we hope you'll come sit on our board too. We'd be honored.
Absolutely, I want to come. But definitely to continue to educate these current leaders. They're amazing CEOs. I'm sure Dr. Alexander knows that. Amazing CEOs here in these charter schools. And the honor to train them and educate them is one that I don't take lightly. And I'm very, very pleased to continue to do that work.
And think nationally too, with your experience, you can apply for the National Product Directors Conference. The charter school movement is huge, so I'm tired of being the spot in the room when I go into these spaces. They're so passionate, they're in their weeds, and they're not up here, and I feel like I'm like, hey, look at us, but there's no us in the room. So I really want to encourage someone with your experience and background and passion to think. Tell your community yes, but also think like how can I leverage what I know here to other places across the nation. So think about applying to national speaking opportunities as well.
And Monique,
having been that spot in the room all my life, I understand exactly what you need. And I wish we weren't continuing to be spots in the room.
Right. Go ahead.
Dr. Alexander, that's the one. She's young, she can travel around, old.
You gonna tell you don't have to do anything but turn on the computer. Perfect timing. Thank you for the only benefit.
Go ahead and give us your final words, Monique. I don't think you were able to answer our question.
Oh yeah, sorry, I kind of jumped into hers because I didn't want to lose her. So for me, actually our next event speaks to what we're trying to do. So obviously my office, we're created by executive order, and so, if things change in November, they may or may not choose to keep us. But in September, our next event will be connecting communities of color with academics, broadband, and culture. And so we keep pushing for not just teacher diversity, but teacher quality and cultural competency is a big thing we've been pushing. We had one last year, and we want to have another conversation this year, because while we ideally want to have all teachers that look like our kids, right now the majority of them are young white females who don't relate to our children. And so we have been fighting this family school engagement piece for a very long time and have not had the data to support it. But now that we are in spaces where you're now in the home, those relationships matter more than ever. And so I will just continue to fight that fight internally so that we can put it in everything externally. And so that's just our mission right now is cultural competency and family school and community engagement as a means to supporting student success.
We love it, Monique. Thank you so much. And take us home, Living School.
I'm gonna try to hit it with a 1-minute story to tie it all together. But Living School started back in 2012 when we started this community organizing project at a different school. I was a 6th grade writing teacher at the time. We were the highest performing open enrollment school in New Orleans. This was just past the 5-year post-Katrina mark. And we were so successful because our students' mediocre test scores were slightly better than anybody else's mediocre test scores in the city. And because of that, like Oprah and John Legend and Sir Richard Branson and Neil Hastings and all these billionaires bust down the doors of our school, like, what you guys are doing is amazing. We're gonna make this happen everywhere. And all of us who were teachers, and especially all of the students and families who were at that school, after these folks would walk out, we kind of look at each other and be like, we do have some good things happening here, but there is a heck of a lot that's missing. And this is not what we think other people should be doing because we don't believe in what we're doing yet. And so that really instigated us to start community organizing, to ask the question, what did we believe in? And the answer we finally came to is we believed in schools that are about raising healthy children and healthy communities. And that's what we now call our equity mission. Equity is about being in right relationship with each other. Dr. Douglas really challenged the white supremacist delusion behind our modern colonial education system that we're a part of here, and this whole idea that, yes, accountability is vital, but there is no adult in the real world who's accountable to a multiple choice test, not one. Tell me one adult who makes a salary taking a multiple choice test. There is not one. There's accountability, there's real accountability. In those high income schools that Dr. Douglas spoke about, There is incredible accountability. It is not to a test. It is to authentic outcomes that matter to kids and families. And that's the accountability that we're after. And the funding question I think was an interesting one, because how we compare educational funding to each other, which state is funding it the most. We don't compare it to the private schools where how the most privileged students' education is funded. We don't think about what would it take not just to fund righteous education, but to fund all the human rights, right? Housing, food, nutrition, healthcare, they are all tied together. That funding system is tied together. And when we started organizing, there's so many leaders in this city who've tried to start great schools. Dr. Jackson, I know, Doc, tried to start a school years ago and is brilliant and was trying to do great work. And he is one of so many, of course. But of course, it's not just great people with a great idea. You got to raise funds. It took us over $2 million to get the doors of our school open. Where did that $2 million come from? Well, it came from a whole bunch of different funders, but behind all those funders was Walmart. And there's a giant Walmart across the street from New Orleans, from us in New Orleans East. It has been raping and pillaging the community, employing people at below living wage salaries for generations, reaping the benefits of that wealth, and then investing it philanthropically to control the conversation. Taxation over philanthropy, right? That's what it would take to create an equitable education funding. Taxation of the wealthy, of the corporations. They'll still do great, they will still thrive, but they'll thrive in ways that are going to ultimately benefit people and not just themselves. And that, that's the I don't think I got into a minute, but hopefully it was a couple minutes. That's the story that is behind Living School, and it's behind all the work that we're trying to do.
Well, thank you so much. On behalf of Drea and I would like to thank all of the panelists for coming out tonight. I have a relationship with everyone, so I'm glad that you guys came out for me. Alexis, thank you for letting us borrow Malcolm. He's just amazing, and he definitely represented the youth well this evening. Amen. So I just want to, as we close, I want to elevate some of the key points from the panelists. The number one thing I heard is the power behind the vote. We have to make sure that we are voting in our local representation, state representation, and national representation matters. We have to hold those people accountable. Second thing I heard was the census. Complete your census. It will determine the funds that are allocated to our communities. The next thing that kept coming up and that resonates with me, because I'm a firm believer in this, is the community organizing piece and the power, the answers that we need, that we've all been searching for in our communities. We need to collaborate, get together, make sure that we're providing the educational experiences for our own children that we want to see, and stop allowing other people to make the decisions for our kids in our community. Dr. Alexander brought up the trauma-informed support piece. We have a mental health crisis in our country, and we see it each and every day in New Orleans. And we need to make sure that our children, our teachers, our educators are taken care of. Last but not least, access to resources. We are not very good in the public school landscape at sharing. We need to get better with that. We need to make sure that all of our kids, regardless to what schools they attend and what they're doing, they have what they need to access the education that's being offered to them and to be able to effectively engage. So tonight, I thank you guys for joining us. I thank you guys for joining the conversation. I thank my panelists for bringing all of their passion and experience to the conversation. I can't thank you guys enough. We'll see you on part 2, I believe. Thank you again, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, for hosting us at the LGS Auditorium. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Good job, everybody. Good job. Good job. Good job. You guys did excellent. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Monique, can I get your email address, please?
Wait, hold up. Let me make sure we cut the live. Yes. Wait. We don't need the world emailing Monique. And this one too. This
is the main one.
I'll put it in the chat. Okay. Thank you.
That's the main one. That one.
And Dr. Douglas, I'll make sure Stefin gets